Good morning, Wabash.
Good morning, Wabash.
7 years ago today, our country was attacked on our own soil by terrorists. So please join me in a moment of silence in remembrance of those who died, those who suffered, and those who are still suffering today. Thank you. Today we have Dean Raiders to give our second speech in the Gentleman's Rule series. So please help me welcome him as he presents his talk, an acceptance speech for the Wabash gentleman and responsible citizen.
Thank you, Travis, Kevin, Steve, and all the members of the Sphinx Club for inviting me to speak today. The Sphinx Club, of which I'm a proud and loyal alumnus. Throughout my talk this morning, you'll hear me make reference to Wabash heroes of mine, both well-known and unsung. Allow me to preface my remarks by talking briefly about an unsung hero in need of our help. Bill Melvin, a Bon Appetit employee who has worked food service at Wabash for nearly 30 years, is battling esophageal cancer. While not an alum, Bill has nevertheless been a loyal son to the college he loves so well through countless hours serving our men at the Sparks Center, Scarlet Inn, catered events, and Midnight Munch. Next Thursday, immediately following Dean Warner's chapel talk, Bon Appetit will be having a fundraising cookout on the mall to assist Bill and his family in his fight. Please consider bringing your money, your appetites, and your prayers to chapel next week. Ladies and gentlemen, new to our community this year, this is what we do here at Wabash. We join together and we help each other in times of need. Thanks in advance for doing that next Thursday. The title of my talk this morning, An Acceptance Speech for the Wabash Gentleman and Responsible Citizen, is an effort to not only follow the lead of President White last week, but also to invoke some of the spirit of this election year season. I hope to capture some of the style and feel of the acceptance speeches delivered over the last few weeks at national political conventions. Let's begin, therefore, on a requisite but sincere patriotic note. As Travis mentioned, today marks the 8th anniversary of the September 11 attacks on our country. Their tragic consequences were, for me, only outweighed by the heroic and inspirational manner individual Americans came together as one, putting petty differences aside to send a message of resiliency and unity to the world. That America First approach is something we can use as a model for the Wabash First approach we should take with our heated conversations, differences of opinion, fraternity rivalries, and personal diversity. When we do that, we create a Wabash at its best, and an ability for our men to leave here better prepared to meet the President's ringing-in challenge to create a world of change we can believe in. Now, hopefully more than just our poli-sci majors have noticed that the preceding paragraph used both Republicans and Democrats' campaign slogans in the message. America First, change we can believe in. That was an intentional effort on my part to find political balance. And balance, you'll hear, is a major theme of this talk. When President White offered me the opportunity to serve my alma mater as Dean of Students, I was awestruck, excited, humbled, and anxious. I'm here, obviously, because I accepted his nomination for that position. This type of an acceptance speech is one in which the candidate explains to the electorate how he or she will serve in office. Allow me to answer some of that. First of all, I realize I step into the shoes of a man who held this position in high esteem and with great dignity and grace. The number one question that I've received since moving into the dean's office has not had anything to do with strategic planning, vision for the job, or even the gentleman's rule itself. It's been, what do we now call Dean Bambry? From my vantage point and that of the many students he has served and led in his time here, he will always be seen as worthy of the honored title of Dean. He's here this morning. Please join me in thanking Dean Tom Bambry for his outstanding and dedicated leadership of our men over the last 11 years. One of the many, many things I learned from Dean Bambry as his associate the past 4 years was the sense of balance needed to do well in our office. He always reminded me, in every disciplinary case, there's a great argument for mercy and a great argument for standards. Indeed, finding the balance of those two stances is a daily effort for Dean Warner and me. Dean Bambry also established the 3 doctrines of the Dean's office. Number 1, 5% of the students cause 95% of the problems. Just when you think an issue is over, it's not. And everybody thinks the dean has money, he just doesn't want to give it to them. That's my favorite. Achieving a proper balance of those elements of our work is one of the chief responsibilities and challenges of this office. And again, I humbly accept them. I've also been shaped in my approach to my work by the Dean of Students through most of my time here as a student, Dean Norman C. Moore. Dean Moore was a tough but kind, stern but humorous man who invoked both fear and joy in the lives of his students. As Director of Alumni and Parent Relations Tom Runge put it, Dean Moore had the demeanor of a bear, and you didn't know if it was a grizzly or a teddy when he reached out his arms to squeeze you. My favorite Dean Moore story from my time here, notice I said it's my favorite, it's not the only encounter I had with the dean. We won't go into that. And it's one that I've told here before, was when the Dayton Flyers came to Wabash to face our undefeated Little Giants football team in 1982. The Flyers were essentially the Mount Union of the 1980s. The Friday afternoon before the game, the Flyers arrived to campus early and wanted to hold a walk-through practice on our field. Finding our team on it and soccer and intramural teams practicing on the other fields, Dayton starters took their positions behind you out there on the mall, with their subs encircling them, effectively shutting down the mall from Wabash student use. It was soon discovered by some enterprising Wabash student that the Flyers' travel secretary had made the big mistake of having their team lodged at the Lew Wallace Inn. You can probably, and dare I say, hopefully, imagine the next part of the story. About 1 o'clock in the morning, I got a call at my fraternity house from a baseball teammate who asked that I gather some guys and head to the north side of campus. I did so, and as soon as I stepped into the Arboretum area, I could hear the faint sound of our beloved fight song. By the time I reached the parking lot of the Lou, the sound of the song was deafening, combining, of course, with the exchanges of taunts and jeers by the Dayton football team, who had been awakened from a peaceful slumber, and the friendly retorts from my fellow Wabash men. At that point, it didn't matter who lived where, what our political, racial, ethnic, or religious backgrounds were. What mattered was that their team had dared to try to monopolize our turf on our mall, and that we rallied together as one to show our objections. Well, as we were reveling in our loud and proud Wabash way, again, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, we failed to realize that Dean Moore had made his appearance at the gathering. He was not happy, and he quickly and emphatically told us enough was enough and we needed to go home or else. As fine gentlemen and responsible citizens, we obliged. But as we left, in a barely audible voice, our dean, whom I suspect didn't like losing his view of the mall that afternoon from his office, whispered, "Nice job, boys." Our football players beat Dayton by a point the next day in one of the greatest games in Wabash history. But we Wabash men scored a larger and greater victory as we overcame our usual territorial differences to unify as one. And this future dean learned a valuable lesson of balance in the process. Another Wabash man who helped to shape my appreciation for balance and my ability to accept this position was Scott Farrote, class of '84. Scott was my pledge father and one of the finest Wabash men I've known. From my first day on campus, Scott modeled the work hard, play hard balance indicative of our students. He was serious and stern at times and fun and an absolute riot at others. He was very tough, yet quite vulnerable. He guided me to a daily, deep understanding of what being a gentleman and a responsible citizen is all about. As an aside, he was also the best barefooted kicker I've ever seen. He never played football here, but his field goals from the railroad tracks to the stoplight on South Grant in front of what is now College Hall and then was the Teak House were legendary. But in all seriousness, Scott had a positive, lasting impression on all who knew him. And those who knew him were better gentlemen and citizens because of it. He introduced me to the call, value, and intrinsic rewards of community service. And it's most fitting that Huntington, Indiana's County Leadership Award was named for him. Scott passed away 11 years ago yesterday, depriving us all, especially his wife and 2 daughters, of an exceptional, well-balanced Wabash man. I miss and appreciate his gentlemanly guidance so very much, especially as I do my work in Center Hall. Speaking of my work in Center Hall and across campus, I want to take this opportunity to thank the many well-wishers who brightened my days this summer. I also want to thank Dean Warner for stepping up in true Wabash fashion when we needed him most, and Sherry Ross for keeping our ship afloat in the dean's office throughout a most hectic summer. I'm honored to work with you. And again, I am most humbled and appreciative of all the kind thoughts and confidence I've received. To you all, though, I want to issue this reminder and challenge. The responsibility for raising our young gentlemen and responsible citizens does not rest with our office alone. Just as President White is correct in his point last week that we don't produce lists of do's and don'ts here, we must also realize that our men don't arrive here with the same level of understanding of gentlemanly behavior or responsible citizenry. We are all in the education process for this together, and we need to act and react accordingly. Just as Scott Farrote guided my behaviors with his great example, so too should you students who get it guide your Wabash brethren to step up the level of expectation before they get it, the other kind of get it. Faculty, staff, and administration, you too need to lend your assistance. Dean Warner and I can't do it ourselves. We need your help. Allow me to use a negative but frequently seen example to further my point. Nothing disappoints me more than when I walk up to a sporting event, fraternity house, residence hall, chapel sing practice, like last night, or other occasions where ungentlemanly behavior is taking place, and yet all eyes shift to me. Uh-oh, here's the dean. Or often, thank goodness, there's the dean. That look in the eyes of many observers of the behavior is one that's disappointing, as if the actions I mentioned would have continued indefinitely had I not arrived. The second any of you look to me, or even look around to see if Dean Warner or I are here or there, is the exact moment the rule is not working as well as it should. Gentlemen, the nature of our rule is one that assumes 2 fundamentals. One, that you have a fundamental understanding of what is and is not good, gentlemanly behavior and responsible citizenry. And 2, that you value and respect the rule enough to hold each other accountable. Similarly, professional members of our community, the nature of our rule assumes the entire community will help to guide our men through the messiness that is college life and the educational process inherent to the gentleman and responsible citizen cause. I ask all of you, therefore, to accept this challenge and help our college preserve this great way to inspire and educate young men. And, contrary to popular belief, our students want this type of high expectation, team-oriented approach to the gentleman's rule. Last year, in the beginning of the strategic planning process, the committee looking at admissions conducted a survey. What characteristics do we most seek in prospective students? Of the 15 choices faculty, alumni, and current students had, the students at a 76% rate placed students who will embrace the gentleman's rule at the top of the list. 76% of the very men who are held to this standard sought to have that standard maintained by incoming Wabash men. What a strong message to each other, our community, and this new dean. In a May meeting with the Board of Trustees College Life Committee, Patrick Smith, class of '08, was asked for the one thing he might change about the college he loves so well. Patrick did not hesitate and replied that students took the gentleman's rule more seriously. This is the same Patrick Smith who, as editor of The Bachelor, may have lost some friends, but exercised strong convictions when he chastised his fellow upperclassmen in an editorial. And I quote, "Juniors and seniors who profess to love Wabash stand, it seems, idly by as the gentleman's rule becomes a joke for many students. Not a particularly funny joke either. The men who best understand the Wabash mindset and the Wabash way of life seem to be absent without official leave at best. This is an unacceptable novelty," Patrick continued, "as in the past, upperclassmen provided much of the institutional and moral leadership to be found among the students. Indeed, no rational observer could be terribly surprised if the future of the gentleman's rule were to become less secure than it currently is. That would be, we believe, a tragedy for Wabash and her loyal sons." Those juniors are now seniors, and the sophomores and freshmen who read that indictment are now faced with the responsibility to step it up. Excuse me. To find a better balance between the freedom the rule espouses and the expectation it sets. That better balance is to adopt a more accepting approach to each other. This is another way to look at this, therefore, as an acceptance speech. We have a wonderfully diverse population on our campus, amongst both staff and students. We should honor that diversity, treasure it, and celebrate it. Last March, Dr. Lake challenged us here in chapel to embrace our diverse populations, especially amidst the pain caused by last semester's hurtful incidents. You may recall that he asked 2 young, frustrated, confused, and concerned freshmen to rise, then asked us all to rise as one to symbolize our support for their efforts to fight through their plight. I am so pleased and proud that Dominique and Wesley returned for their sophomore years. We made that happen, Wabash. We showed we wouldn't let a bigot chase away 2 outstanding young men and others poised to follow them. We took the challenge personally, and when Wabash men are challenged, they most often respond well and with great positive effect. You did so last year, but what about this year? How will we handle diverse political beliefs during the political campaign season? How will we handle our differences of race, religion, creed, ethnicity, and sexual orientation among our community and those with which we intermingle, including the university 30 miles to the south? Will we continue to allow some to take Bell Week off from our commitment to act as gentlemen and responsible citizens at all times, both on and off the campus? I sure hope not. For when we do, we lessen the sanctity of our rule and give those very black and gold-clad rivals reason to ridicule us for not honoring our own traditions. Now you'll notice that I've not mentioned the name of the university in Greencastle, and for good reason. Last year, while I described the rivalry to my children, in fact, explaining to my 8 and 11-year-old sons why they would not be attending the game, you know what I'm talking about, my youngest son, Joel, ran into my wife, who's in the other room. "Mom, Daddy just said the D word." Thinking that I had just referred to the Dannies with a 4-letter preceding adjective, Julie reminded me to watch my language, especially since I can get pretty fired up myself during Bell Week. When I swore that I did not swear, Joel looked at his mother and said, "No, Mom, Dad didn't say damn. He said a worse D word. He said DePaw." Now, while that may be a cute little story, there is a message of balance in it as well. Why do we spend so much of that week yelling that school's name in order to get the typical verb response? Seriously, why do we do that? Why do we sell, buy, and wear yellow T-shirts to be worn during a week and for a game that should be all about us, about red and white, about Wabash? One answer might be to help balance the spirit ratio of that event. Since we fewer and prouder and louder Wabash fans annually win the spirit contest. But they have far more students and alumni than we do. So at least numerically, they don't need our help yelling their school name or sporting their school colors. You and I both know we can out-yell them, we can out-spirit them, we can out-support them. And on November 15th, we will do all of those, plus out-hit them, outscore them, and then outsource them back south without their current 300-pound iron friend. Please consider accepting my suggestion that we do all of that without the usual free publicity we mistakenly and often ungentlemanly provide to them annually. I've mentioned some of my Wabash heroes this morning. Deans Moore, Warner and Bambry, Scott Farrote, Tom Runge, Sherry Ross, Dominique Thomas, and Wesley Smith. Allow me to conclude this morning by borrowing some phrases from a couple of others, coaching legends Mac Petty and Rob Johnson. In regard to the gentleman's rule and our collectively responsibility to find, guide, educate, and honor our young gentlemen and responsible citizens, it is time, Wabash, for us to, quoting Coach Petty, get after it. We need to get after each other to raise our expectations, to heed Patrick Smith's call to take the gentleman's rule more seriously. Can we do it? Will we do it? I stand here today willing to accept the challenge to at least help lead that effort because, to quote Coach Johnson, I am a Wabash man, and I know I can. Collectively, are we prepared to accept this challenge as a unified, active community? I believe the answer is in one of our most proud and simple cheers. Yes, because we are Wabash. And students, I am absolutely convinced you can and will accept the responsibilities that come with being gentlemen and responsible citizens. You can and will accept each other and your diversity. You can and will embrace the high expectations you have for each other. You can and will win the bell back. You can and will find balance in your lives through your academic, extracurricular, spiritual, and social experiences. You can and will produce better gentlemen and responsible citizens this year. And why? Because you are Wabash men, and you know you can. Gentlemen and responsible citizens, let's have a great year. Thank you.